Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
A good enough home to me isn't about like being like, oh, everyone makes a mess and I'll just accept it for what it is. It's about finding the balance and harmony for what good enough looks like for you. And instead of focusing on aesthetics and how my home looked, I focused in on what things can I do that impact how my home feels.
Hey friend, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr, the All Mom Does podcast, part of the Purposely Podcast Network. We are just rolling around in season 9. Not exactly sure how that happened, but here we are. And as per the usual, we are coming to you with guest topics, questions that you've let us know that you're interested in. And we just love coming alongside and having these conversations, which is why I'm very excited for you to meet my new buddy. She lives in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. Gorgeous. And she is going to help us get our lives together, get our stuff together. You know, just a small brief, just a small thing to help us accomplish. Katy Wells, thanks so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to hang out and have a great conversation.
Absolutely. Well, I know that a lot of the listeners are going to know who you are, but I want to hear it from you. We know you're in Asheville. We know you got a couple of kiddos. Tell us all the things. Give us all the deets.
All the things. Well, I always love to say I was not born organized. In fact, I have an older sister. I'm the youngest of 3. She's 6 years older, and I used to pay her to clean my bedroom. So that's like my disclaimer, because often when people hear declutter expert, at least when I used to hear that, or organizing expert, I thought must be nice for her to be born that way. You know, I assumed you just were born with it or you weren't. But really what I've learned throughout the years, Julie, and we'll talk about this, is it's truly a life skill. And so many of us were not taught the life skill. When does something become clutter? What is the meaning we're assigning stuff? What is the root of our clutter, our shopping habits, and so much more. So super excited to be here today and just see where the convo takes us.
Absolutely. And I love talking to folks. We have another interview with Dana K. White where she talks about, I was not born like this. This is something I had to accrue. And I find such a relief in that statement. And I laughed with her. I said, I feel like I have always just lived 3 houses down from someone who just got the download, got the chip, can walk into any situation and go, obviously the forks need to go there. And I'm like, is it obvious? I didn't know that was obvious. So it's always so great to hear from someone who says, hey, this is something that I've had to figure out with my unique brain, my unique perspective, my unique attachment to certain things. So I am really excited for us to begin to chat about that, because I think there are a lot of us who live right there, who live in that place of going, I feel like this is something I should be able to do, but I'm struggling with. Talk to me about what you're seeing. And I want to get into the nitty gritty of tips and tricks and how we can do some things, but I'm always curious to take a reading on where we're at today. I know for myself, the generation that I'm part of, we have onboarded now all of our parents and grandparents stuff. So we have a couple of generations that they came probably through experiences where you had to really be cautious to hang on to stuff, and that you were going to buy something once that was really good and you were going to try to hand that down, that you were going to buy at heirloom quality. We didn't have mass production like we do now. We didn't have Valentine's Day parties at the kids' school in which they came home with 3 little squishy figurines and pink sunglasses and beads and all the stuff that now seems to be a part of modern life. And I've had a couple guests on before who have talked about one of the things I know that we're seeing when it comes to today is we have access to all this stuff. We have immediate access to all this stuff. We have a cultural expectation that you can't just be your kid's homeroom mom. You got to be the homeroom mom with thematic everything for every season. And we also, I think, and I certainly have fallen into this myself, weirdly, I feel like we've put on women like never before. Mm-hmm. Not only is it enough to have your kitchen floor clean, you also need to be able to open any cabinet and in the perfect font and in the perfect way and in the perfect alignment, that consumer thing. The bin of hand sanitizers all perfectly coated by the spectrum of the rainbow. The perfect drawer with the perfectly lined up Mr. Clean Magic erasers. This is not a sponsored episode, by the way.
It could be.
But call me. Hey,
Yeah.
Mr. Clean, call me. So what are you like? What would be your snapshot of some of the unique challenges today when we talk about organization, what should be in the house, what
Yeah.
shouldn't be in the house?
I think there is a big presence and this even bigger turn with this external expectation. And let's call it what it is. It's massive amounts of pressure and burdensome pressure for so many of us women because of our use of technology and where we're spending our time. So if you hop on Instagram or TikTok, I mean, I feel immediately less than, I feel too old, like I need to lose weight, not organized enough. And I'm not, no one's logging in order to feel bad about themselves.
Right.
But when you're constantly seeing and it seems like everyone else has their life together, then I mean, your brain naturally goes, well, you stink. You stink at this. And I think it's just the amount of time we're spending on these platforms. We just have to be so careful not to compare ourselves to the highlight reel when we're using our reality, right? So I think that definitely plays a role. And also, I think lately, I mean, again, with social media, think about social media. It's all aesthetics. It's video, like YouTube, it's video. And so there's even more of this kind of pressure that your home should always look perfectly tidy 24/7 in order to be whatever, a good homemaker, a good wife, a good, like we all kind of can read between the lines culturally if this is what we're being sold all the time. So I think years ago in my declutter journey, I realized in conjunction when I was trying to figure out my clutter, get on top of things, get my life together, right? That I need that culture set that benchmark, right? Or at least seemingly. And when we have this benchmark subconsciously or unconsciously in the back of our head, we're always going to feel like a failure. The second we clean the countertops off, then the kids get home and the grandkids get home and it's just like a disaster or tornado. We're always going to feel stuck in shame. I can't do this. I'm a failure. Why is this easy for everyone else? Frustration. Why am I the only one that cares in my house? Resentment. All my kids and partner does is make a mess and I'm the one responsible for it. And those, Julie, I mean, those are really stinky places to live. Like I did that for a long, long time. So one of the things I decided early on was, first of all, having a perfectly tidy home 24/7 is not possible. And I think a lot of the solutions we're still being sold to this day as a solution to clutter and mess, paint enemy or paint what I now call expected mess. And clutter is all one big enemy. Like, here's what you need to do so this doesn't happen. So dovetailing a bit more if I can, there is a massive difference between clutter, which is completely optional, and expected mess, which happens from being a living, breathing human being on this planet.
Ooh,
Everybody
I
makes
like
messes.
this distinction. I like this.
Mess is cyclical. And I started calling it expected mess because I would always be like, oh my gosh, how did the mess come back? And I didn't call it mess at first. I called it clutter. Like people come to me and they're like, I just cleaned my countertops and put everything away and now it's filled with clutter. And I'm like, actually, those are coffee mugs you just used. Actually, you just need to put the ketchup bottle away. And I think language matters, right? Language matters because the meaning we assign that language influences us, how we think, feel, like, can I do this or not, gives us hope or keeps us stuck. And so the solution for clutter is to build the skill of letting it go. And then the solution for expected mess is to do what I call reset. So that's resetting a space back to its baseline tidiness level once, twice, 3 times a day, even once a week, if it's someplace small like a nightstand, right? And that gives your brain that breath of fresh air, like tidiness, right? Because here's why this matters. At the end of the day, we are wired. Our brains crave peace and order. And clutter is the opposite of that. Clutter is chaos. And even the mess and the piles and expected mess that are normal and expected can still be frustrating, right? No one likes to see that stuff. But I think it's important, in addition to this, right, to then set the bar for yourself. So I talk about this in chapters 1 and 2 of the book, Making Home Your Happy Place. When we let culture or other people's expectations set the bar 24/7, your home needs to look like a Pottery Barn ad. Again, we live in a space where it's like an exhausting game we can't win. So I decided what a good enough home should look like for me. This was very much inspired by the concept of good enough parenting. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It changed my life. It's just the concept is you don't need to be a perfect parent to be a great parent. You can make mistakes. And for whatever reason, I was like, I can.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay.
You know? And I think same thing applies towards our home. And a good enough home to me isn't about like being like, oh, everyone makes a mess and I'll just accept it for what it is. It's about finding the balance and harmony for what good enough looks like for you. And instead of focusing on aesthetics and how my home looked, I focused in on what things can I do that impact how my home feels, right? How your home feels. And so my benchmark went from a perfect house 24/7 that isn't achievable to a home that's easy to tidy and a home I can feel happy in, a living room I can feel connected with my family in while we play Uno or build forts in the living room. And I think, again, when we're able to identify, shift, and challenge those stories and set that goalpost or benchmark for ourselves, it massively reduces so much mental clutter and this burden and stress so many of us moms and women feel inside our home because it is so much pressure.
Yeah.
But when you recognize that, it can just like dissipate. And even I still have to remind myself of that. Like my husband said something so profound the other day and my friends were like, are you okay? He said that because he came onto the podcast. He goes, if you walked into our house, you would not know Katy does what she does. You wouldn't know she's a declutter expert. Now my house, night and day difference from the clutter we used to have to our home now. That's not what he meant. We've decluttered so much. What he meant was I don't have perfectly labeled bins. If you open my pantry, I don't decant anything because I have kids and I also don't want to put time and energy into maintaining the perfectly organized hand sanitizers like that. Yeah. If that's what you want to do, by all means do it. Yeah. But I have the chip bags. I have the cranberries sitting in the ugly wrapper. It's all good. And I think, again, you get to choose what feels good for you. And I think part of that is your capacity, your time and energy. And if you actually care about it and your home doesn't need to look like a Pottery Barn ad in order to support you, your goals, your lifestyle. And I think we can all take hope in that.
Right. I love that you say what supports you, because I have certainly been guilty of creating systems that aesthetically, I'm a visual person. I'm a creative person. I love when things look a certain way. But the reality is sometimes, particularly in a household the size of mine, the most aesthetic way is oftentimes the most inconvenient, difficult to maintain way. So I love this idea of support. You tap into this, and I want to dig a little further, and I want to do it in a way that does not promote shame or guilt or making someone second guess themselves. But sometimes you'll have somebody just say, look, I'm just messy. This is just how I am. I know where something is in that pile. I like all my things. I like all my stuff. And yet I too have seen a lot of research that talks about our brains really want a way to see past all of the crazy and to be able to kind of line things up in a certain way that it somatically impacts us, that it truly, I think that there are times that we are praying, hey, God, I need peace. And what we probably really need to do is clean out the junk drawer. And I don't say that lightly. I'm saying that from a perspective of He created us a certain way. His word talks about the ways in which He created order and gave certain instructions and all kinds of things. So connect for me those dots. Again, I want to be sensitive to everybody's going to have different versions of what this looks like. But where do we sometimes miss something that could be for our benefit, and we sort of excuse it away by just saying, oh, I just like my stuff and I know where stuff is. I'm not worried about it. Connect those dots.
I mean, I would call this like clutter tolerance from like a 30,000 foot view. I think we're all kind of innately have these different clutter tolerances. For example, I would say sensitive might not be the right. I'm very in tune with my physical environments. Again, I think all of us are to a certain extent, but some of us are better at blocking it out. Or some of us might just be like, well, I know that there's piles like to our partners. I mean, think about, we always marry the other one, right? Like the opposites attract rule here. You're like, that's clutter. And they're like, no, but I know where everything is. Like I was the one who was like, get rid of your stuff. And he's like, no, I use this stuff. So I think, again, you have to make it work for you and find those, balances or harmonies between you and your partners, which I know is easier said than done. It's nuanced, but it's definitely a part of the conversation. Maybe your partner is a little more sensitive or, and then we can get into defining what is shared spaces I think that's an important piece, especially with those of us with families. I was really good at calling my husband and kids out for their stuff, and not working on my own. So for me, that meant just starting with my personal spaces, closets, etc. And then that was a great way to just kind of open them to the idea and onboard them in that way. I know I'm kind of going off a little bit.
No, but I think
it's good.
Yeah, it's a really important topic. I mean, because it is, if we could be decluttered and tidy in our own little world, but as it turns out, for most of us, the house is not an island, and we are not there able to keep it exactly, because there are going to be other people moving through that space. It's very important.
But then you have you have a background in psychology, right?
Yeah.
So I don't, but I've always found psychology interesting, and it tends to be integrated into a lot of my strategies, or what I would call brain-based decluttering strategies. And, even if you are someone who's like, I'm messy, or this is just the way I am, but a UCLA study, maybe you've heard this one, found that women who describe their homes as either cluttered or messy have elevated levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, right? And it's not just when you're handling the mess. It's not just when you're looking at it. It is that your cortisol stays high 24/7 when you're at home, because, again, of how we are built, because of how we were designed. And I think it's important to recognize that, especially for those who might be like, well, they don't bother me, or I don't seem to be, like it's just is what it is, or I can't change it. I think we all kind of know that our response, maybe you've just gotten good at coping with it. Because again, we can't change how we're wired. And I would also want to say, one of the most profound things I learned, this is just through self-development. I don't know if it was James Clear. I don't know that he coined it, but it's the reality that identity drives behavior. And my identity was, I'm a hot mess mom. And I think identities can cause more harm than good sometimes. And so in my sense, my hot mess mom was like, well, that's who I am. So that means I don't need to challenge these stories in my head. That means I don't need to try harder. And if you're good with that, then by all means, you found your good enough home. Great. But if you're like, ooh, I wonder if this is kind of holding me back from taking action, or getting unstuck, or digging deeper and getting rid of more, then perhaps, reformulating that identity is important. And think about the identities our parents gave us. Like, if you grew up hearing, you're so disorganized, then you're probably going to be disorganized, because identity drives behavior. And a really simple way to step out of that is to just take small actions for the behavior you desire. Maybe that's organized. Maybe that's minimalist. Maybe that's simplifier. That's what me and my communities, we're simplifiers. What would a simplifier do? A simplifier would do your one thing. What's your one thing you're doing today? Even if it is a survival mode day, I would do a clutter audit, which is a micro declutter session that takes seconds, versus doing nothing and saying, I give up.
You think that you are in the final round of getting all this parenting done. You've got kids who are in high school. You're starting to think about college. And you're thinking, this is it. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr. I am a podcaster, and I'm a mom of 8. And here's what I want you to know about George Fox University. It's a different way of doing college. Why? Because yes, it's all about getting a fantastic degree to set your kid up for their future. They have 60 undergrad programs available at George Fox University. But that's not where the story ends. It's also about equipping them spiritually. If you get out of college with a degree, but you don't have a closer relationship with God, that obviously is going to deeply impact what your young adult life looks like. So for your kiddos, I want you to consider, what would it mean for your child to be able to go to George Fox University, where 93% of George Fox students say they now have a closer relationship with Jesus? George Fox University is located in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon. They have 23 Division III athletic programs, and 100% of students at George Fox University receive financial aid. George Fox University is dedicated to their promise. They want every student to be known for who God created them to be. So listen, parents, you are getting into some of those final laps, but you definitely want to make these last laps count in a big way when it comes to the legacy of your parenting. So be sure and check out for your student, georgefox.edu. That's georgefox.edu. you bring up something that I think is really, that I've noticed definitely in my own life is I had seasons, particularly when I had a whole bunch of tiny children living in my house,
Oh,
where
yeah.
there was almost a grace for it, Katie. It was really kind of interesting. I could sort of deal with, okay, it's chaos and, it's just chaos. And now, and I've tried to explain this in some ways. I've always been someone, weirdly, even though I've struggled at times to maintain, and particularly the size household, because as it turns out, there aren't a lot of books about how to raise 8 children and keep your house clean. It's very weird. Like it's a gap in the market. There are 6 of us who need this book. But I will say that one of the things that I've noticed now, and I'm trying to get better, honestly, about just owning it. I was someone who really liked my space a certain way. And yes, I'm the girl who puts my clothes in the closet by color. And I do some really goofy things. My own personal spaces have always been pretty particular, but I've had more grace for the crazy in the shared spaces and all of that. One thing that I'm seeing happen though, and I don't really have a word for this phenomenon. I think it's called perimenopause actually, but the phenomenon is I can't take it anymore. It's like the things that used to not bother me. But once my kids got to a certain age, once a bunch of them launched, once they hit a certain level of, if you can drive a car and go pick up in and out 4 times a week, you can also get your laundry back up the stairs. I mean, it's just, and for some reason I say it in a way like that grace kind of lifted. I say that as an encouragement to a mom out there that you may have a season where truly for a little while, you're able to just roll with it and it's okay. And then that season may switch and you may discover, I really, for my own level of stress, my own level of what my brain is needing, I got to get this stuff sorted out. You self-admittedly say, hey, I wasn't born with this skill set. And then something switched. What was the switch for you? What was the pivot for you when you went, was there a moment like, I can't live like this anymore? Or was it just a slow drip? Like what happened where you went, I've got to figure this out?
Yeah, there were quite a few aha moments. One of the first was when I realized I was a no mom. I was telling my young kids, no, I can't play every single day. It was so automatic. They would get halfway through, hey, can you play? No. And it wasn't because I didn't want to. It was because I was so overwhelmed and exhausted and burned out inside my home because of the amount of clutter. And then really I tried all the methods. I did all the things. I rainbow organized. I burnt myself out. I tried Spark Joy. And I'm not knocking these methods, but I think we can't depend. Clutter is not one size fits all. And every time I took one step forward, I'd feel successful. Then, by Tuesday, the mess was back and I'm like, I stink at this, right? So my background is in holistic wellness. My husband's a chiropractor by trade, and I'm trying to do all this decluttering. And, I was so anchored and still am a big believer in holistic wellness, getting to the root of it, treating the whole body, not just the symptoms. That way you can get long-term results. And we saw so many miracles in our office with our patients. And I thought, you know what, if that works for wellness, why not apply that same philosophy towards my home? And instead of chopping the weeds off at the root, pull the weeds out, chopping the weeds at ground level, pull the weeds out by the root. And so I started looking at, what was going on in between my ears, the emotions, beliefs, and habits that were keeping me stuck. And also pairing that with really simple strategies that I could do, even though I was working, 40, 50 hours a week at the time. And that's when I really started to see success, is when I just made that call.
You have entitled your podcast The Maximized Minimalist, which is such a fun way of, I love that play on words. Just like I love your expected mess. They're just some really beautiful ways in which you craft words to capture the tension in a way between some of these things in such a maximalist society with such access to resources, and yet the decisions that we need to make in order to maximize our lives by potentially minimalizing things. I mean, it's such a great way, a poetic way of expressing this moment in time in which we're in. For you, when you think of a maximized minimalist, those words really carry a lot of weight these days, because we've got the maximalist style, which is the color drenching of the room and the 479 little tiny items that you source from the thrift store. And it all looks fantastic, but somebody's got to dust it. And then we've got the other side, which is the minimalist, which is, we have a mattress on the floor, we have 2 blankets, and sometimes we buy soap. So what for you, if you can capture it for me, is this concept living by a precept of a maximized minimalist? What is that?
I think we get into dangerous territory when we use minimalism or whatever term you want to use as the destination instead of the vehicle. Right? When we get stuck on the destination, we get stuck in a lot of us. I was getting stuck on like, well, how many pairs of shoes can I have? Or how many sheets is too much? Or how many t-shirts am I allowed to have? Which is very common language if you go to any minimalist forum, and everyone has a different opinion on it. And I'm like, that's not the point. That's not the point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like boundaries matter. Some people use numbers, some people use space. That is crucial when it comes to simplifying. But I think we get so stuck on the granular, invisible rules that tend to run that space. So again, using minimalism, simplifying as a vehicle to get to what you desire, which for so many of us, I mean, is at the end of the day, again, because of how we're wired, like connection to ourselves, connection to God, connection to our community. Oh my gosh. You hop on social media, you're like, the world's going up in flames. And then I'm like, oh, I can go volunteer. I can remember that there are people in this town who are not, on social media doing all these things.
Right.
And I think connection for me is one of the biggest words that really encompasses so much of the trickle down benefit that we get of the investment of our time when we declutter. And that looks different for everyone. Like you said, first of all, I love to thrift. I thrift a lot of my clothes and buy most things secondhand just because I love doing that. But I don't tell everyone that's how you have to do it if you want to be a maximized minimalist. I think that's just tricky territory. I think everyone has the way you were designed. Maybe you love to read physical books, but you feel pressure from the simplifying space to get rid of all your books and use your Kindle. It's like, well, simplify, yes, but that's your thing. Like keep your thing.
Yeah.
And I think we can't lose ourselves and our personality and our God-given talents and just like things that make us us when it comes to simplifying.
I appreciate you leaving that room in there for us to honor who we are and what we do love and how we're wired. And I'm going to say something a little controversial, Katy. So just, like hang on to the arms of your chair. But I have come to believe through my life that thrifting is a spiritual gift because one of my best friends, she'll walk into Goodwill and find Gucci with the tag still on it.
It is. She has been gifted.
Yeah. And I walk into a Goodwill and, it's somebody's, band practice t-shirt.
Mothball.
Yeah. It's just not the same thing. We can walk into the same place. But I do love leaving room for the things that are important to you and curating it well. I think that's one of the words that I've been thinking a lot about, whether it comes to things in my schedule, whether it comes to the, 600 new recipes that I think I'm going to try, but really curating it down. And what's funny for both of us, since we both are authors, is we know one of the most crucial processes in putting out a great book is the editorial process, because you can have a million great ideas, but is it actually really serving the primary message of the story? And I think about that with our families and the way our homes are operating and what we're keeping around, what's important. How are you handling in the people that you're coaching and working with and exploring all this with? I bring it back to those of us in certain ages and stages where we are getting all of the heirlooms and we are getting all of the stuff that was so radically important. I think about my grandmother on my mom's side. My grandfather passed away when he was quite young. He was in his early 50s from a heart attack. And she was someone who kept all of her belongings in pristine shape. She was not a materialistic person, but she was an incredible steward of what she had. And I was reflecting with someone recently that I remember in her home, the very formal, when we used to all have, formal living rooms, the formal furniture that she had in her little front room and how carefully she took care of it, because for her, it was a visual representation of the hours and effort that my grandfather had put in order for them to be able to afford that. It was direct connection between this thing, owning this thing, caring for it well, and honoring what he had spent his 2 short days on this earth doing. And again, they weren't materialistic. It was just a stewardship mindset. Now, You tell me how we give that couch away. I mean, we did, but like it is a really interesting and heavy thing. So
Yeah.
how are you helping people in that? And I'm not talking about the one-off, one sentimental thing that means a lot, but
Yeah.
how are you navigating that? Because clutter has stories. Clutter has deep
Yes.
meaning sometimes. Clutter is
Yes.
associated to character and sometimes even moral code. So
Yes.
how do you advise through that?
It's layered and it's nuanced. Yes. And I talk so much about that in the book, but I think a good starting point for a lot of us who have tried to declutter or have failed at it, if that's how you frame it, or just feel like it's something we struggle with or want to get better at, whatever, is taking a 30,000 foot view. And one thing I discovered to help get me out of that shame, frustration, I stink at this, was just understanding the fabrication of my relationship with stuff. So I call this your stuff story. I talk about this in chapter, I think, 2 of the book. Your stuff story is the invisible script that shapes how you relate to not only your belongings, but to what you buy, to the meaning you assign things, whether that's moral value, a character trait. If I keep this in this condition, it means I respect my husband. I mean, this is probably something not necessarily that she thought consciously, but you noticed in your grandmother, right? And it's not good or bad. I think it's just identifying that we all have our own stuff story, and that impacts these things. And it's really based through 3 pillars. Number 1, the way we grew up. Maybe your parents saved everything because waste not, want not was their family motto, or like, you never know if you're going to hit hard times, you keep everything. That's going to influence you. Maybe you kind of keep the same motto. Maybe you go so far the other way, but it's there. It's part of that fabrication, right? And then you've got your own personal experiences, how you live life, personal experiences, maybe a cross-country move, maybe having 8 kids, impacted your stuff story a little bit, and then of course the cultural messaging, which is such a big piece of it. Our culture is so obsessed with more, buy more, do more, have more. And we're also equally afraid of space.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Space, that margin for life, which we create through simplifying. It brings tears to my eyes. It's like, that is the flip side of that coin. And that is what we are taught to fear. If you sit down for 5 minutes, you're lazy. If you sit down for 5 minutes and read a book, it's like, I tell you what, that was really hard for me to do as I started creating margin because of the cultural messaging. I should always be doing something. Or if I'm not busy and running around like a hot mess all the time, that means somehow I'm failing. You talk to anyone on the street. How are you today? What do we 99% of the time we say, busy. Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. That's because it's so normalized in this culture. Now, if you go to Greece or Italy, I haven't met a ton of Italians or Greek people, but that's typically not what's immediately said. Right. So I think we have to understand that nuance, and these 3 forces kind of form that script. And why do I like to start here? Because it helps. It's not to place blame or be like, oh, that's why I am the way I am. It's to just give yourself grace and compassion. And when we notice these things, oh, that's why I struggle with just in case clutter, or that's why I tend to be more sentimental than my husband, or whatever, it helps us look at it through a new, more compassionate lens and perspective. And then when we have that identification first, that awareness is such a big piece to the puzzle, then we can go, well, is that story true? Or does letting go of this mean XYZ? Right? Maybe it doesn't mean that I'm disrespectful or whatever. I'm a bad mom if I get rid of this artwork. Like all the meaning and symbolism we attach things. We're going to do that because we're human. But I think it's important to understand your stuff story in the sense that it allows you to help take that power back and make a more conscious, intentional effort to make a different decision.
I love this Ray's stuff story. You've given me another one. Girl, you've just got so many great little phrases that I'm going to be hanging. Not a big collection of hats, just a curated collection of hats on that are so good. So good. Well, Katy, I'm so thrilled for you with the book, Making Home Your Happy Place, How to Declutter Without the Overwhelm. Love that promise. And tell the listener how they can go find more of your content, find the book, all the good stuff.
Yeah, come hang out on the podcast, Maximize Minimalist, as Julie shared. Tongue twister, but it's fun once you're there.
Love it. Love it. I think it's great.
And then, yeah, I'm on Instagram under my full name, and you can grab the book, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Audible. It's, making home your happy place. So if you want to add some more tools to your toolbox and help build this life skill, there's chapters for onboarding a partner, teaching your kids, right, how to navigate ownership, notice mess, take care of mess without having to nag or bribe. That sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there's a chapter on each of the 4 clutter types, and a lot of really immediately practical tools, as well as a lot of really fruitful reflection points that, more of what we talked about today.
Sounds fantastic. Well, Katy, I really appreciate you taking the time and being on, and all the best to you as you get this launched. We got to get you back on. You've just got such great wisdom. I would love to have you come back. So thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you, Julie.
All right, friend, you know what I'm going to say already, which is, you got to go to the show notes. We're going to put all Katy's stuff there. Rebecca's going to make sure that you can just pop right over and access all of that. I love it too. When you go to allmomdoes.com, you're going to find a great community there of women who are also trying to figure out their clutter journey. So be sure and check out All Mom Does on the socials and at the website. I would love it if you would pop over, slide in my DMs, and tell me about the topics, the guests, the questions that you have. I'm over on Instagram at Julie Lyles Carr, all the other places too. And I will see you next time on the All Mom Does podcast.